Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we are going to talk about Blue Mage. Yeah, it's one of the hottest topics here in Final Fantasy XIV right now, as the job was unveiled to be released in patch 4.5, though probably not in any way that any of us could have predicted, minus the select few of you who were really going far out, and I probably would have said there's no way they do that a year or two ago. But you know what? If you're right, you're right. So we have to talk about Blue Mage a little bit, and I think I've got my thoughts together enough on the job to share what's going through my brain with this announcement. So without further ado, let's get started. So first off, what is Blue Mage? Blue Mage is a job that is going to be added to Final Fantasy XIV, whose niche is to learn enemy skills and use them in combat. It's something that's been around in the Final Fantasy franchise for quite some time, and it's one of the most requested jobs in Final Fantasy XIV, right alongside the Red Mage and the Samurai, which we got last expansion. Now this job, as I said earlier, is going to be introduced in patch 4.5, though it's not going to be a job in the traditional sense. Now it has no base class, and it's going to be having ranged magic DPS gear and role actions, which is pretty in line with what we'd expect from something like this. However, the rest of the details caught us pretty off guard, so we need to talk about them in greater detail. For one, the job is going to be starting at level 1. Now, this is a pretty big surprise. We haven't had a new job start at level 1 since the Rogue class was added back in patch 2.4. And then Ninja, even the job, was level 30 as we grown to expect. Second, we learned that it would have a maximum level of 50 on release. Now, this was the first alarm that went off with most people like, something's not right here. I wonder what they're going to be doing with this. And the next detail is the one that really starts to put it into perspective. Finally, Blue Mage is going to be Final Fantasy XIV's first, and I quote this, limited job, unquote. This means that it is designed exclusively for solo play and is not designed to be played in parties. This is very important because we've never had anything like this before in the game, hence the term limited job. Now, because this job is designed for solo play, it also has some restrictions in place in which it can't do almost anything in the Duty Finder without forming a pre-made party. That includes things such as PvP, Deep Dungeon, Duty Roulettes, or any duties at all that require matchmaking. If you want to do even some of those things, you'll need pre-made parties. And then, of course, you still can't participate in some of those things because, quite frankly, you're just not allowed to. Now, those are kind of the more general things about Blue Mage. They did go into more detail about specific gameplay aspects of it. For example, obviously we mentioned ranged magic DPS gear and role actions. They also mentioned that the job would be earning bonus experience from monsters in public areas, since that's going to be one of the premier ways to level, since you can't really just go into roulettes or duties without those pre-made parties. They also confirmed that there would be 49 unique abilities to learn as Blue Mage when it initially launches, with more added later. That level cap's also going to be increased later as well when they add more content to the job overall. Now, of those 49 maximum actions that you can actually learn, you can equip 24 of them at any given point, plus your role actions as expected, so 34 with those included. With these actions, you are going to be able to take on the Masked Carnival, which is a Blue Mage exclusive instance that is solo, by the way, where there's With whatever skills you've accrued when you hit level 50, you can also take on the Masked Carnival, a solo-style Blue Mage exclusive instance in which there are 25 different stages, each with their own enemy layouts. These 25 stages have 3 rounds each, so 75 rounds to work through everything. You're going to have to learn as many abilities as possible and be quite adaptive if you want to figure out how to get through the various stages. You're going to have to watch your MP, you're going to have to make sure you have skills that exploit enemy weaknesses. For example, fighting water enemies with lightning type skills to make sure to make use of that elemental weakness. Something we've been saying a little bit more recently in Final Fantasy XIV with other unusual content like Eureka. Now, with all of those details, there's been a lot of talk going around the Final Fantasy XIV community, and it's been kind of tough because I'm still trying to stay relatively neutral because I have not played Blue Mage yet. I am of the initial opinion upon seeing this announcement that I'm glad they stayed loyal to a lot of things with Blue Mage. The look, believe it or not, actually is fairly loyal to the really early Final Fantasy games. The Masquerade style is definitely more classic, whereas the Arabian style, many people may have expected, is more of a Final Fantasy Tactics and a Final Fantasy XI thing. Another aspect that we were immediately excited about when we saw the initial trailer was the ability to learn actions from enemies. This is a Blue Mage staple, although Blue Mages have always had slightly different ways of learning them. Quistis had to use items, and then you had Kimari who had to use the Lancet feature. So there's always been different ways, but kind of going all the way back, seeing or being hit by an ability in combat was always kind of just like the core idea with Blue Mage altogether. They've done that here in spades, and the fact that you're not just learning things from open world monsters, but you're also learning them from bosses inside of instances like the primals, definitely makes it a little bit more exciting and is, again, authentic to what a Blue Mage should probably be in a Final Fantasy game. On top of that, it's pretty cool that it's accessible early on. You know, you can actually play this as soon as you hit level 50 and clear the Praetorium, the 2.0 main scenario quest. Doesn't require any of the expansions, so it's something that players will get to dive into fairly early if they want to, and I actually think they're probably going to raise the free trial cap to 50 and make Blue Mage one of the features players can actually test out to at least a certain degree, but we'll see if that actually happens. Let's get back on track. It's also the only job that has this unique instance in which you actually have to use all the skills to their maximum. I kind of want Hall of the Intermediate for some of the other jobs as a player learning tool, but this as content on its own is a unique and cool idea, something that we as a community are always asking for. And with all of those things that sound good on paper or look good on paper, you then have to stop and think of, was it really worth it? So Blue Mage is one of the most requested jobs in all of Final Fantasy XIV. Red Mage was one, Samurai was one, Dark Knight was up there for a while, and there's a few other ones that are still floating around like Dancer. But Blue Mage is like a Final Fantasy staple, and everyone wanted a Blue Mage, and we got a Blue Mage. But we got it in such a way that the people who wanted it may have gotten something that they didn't exactly bargain for. The idea that we have this limited job that can only be used in a set subset of content, and even then the fact that they probably are going to have to rely on other players in order to actually learn certain skills, looking at certain level 50 content they might have to learn things from. It's just kind of weird, and it's never been done in Final Fantasy XIV before. I was just surprised by the whole thing because I expected that when Blue Mage made it into Final Fantasy XIV, they'd probably give up some of the job's identity to make it fit within this holy trinity, or maybe it would be the first multi-role, whatever. You know, I fully expected it to be a job that we could use in all content. I would have never assumed it would be a job that we can only use in this set content they've made for us. Probably one of the biggest things I've been trying to just roll around my head over the past few days is, why is Blue Mage the job where they drew this line? Why was Blue Mage the one job where they wanted to stay as loyal to the original version of the job as humanly possible, making no compromises whatsoever, and deciding to make the standalone content for it? A lot of people say Red Mage is supposed to be a jack of all trades, master of none. Well, they made it a master of one. It is primarily a ranged magical DPS. Yes, they have Vercure, which you could argue definitely plays back to the whole jack of all trades. Their melee combos also playing back to the jack of all trades thing, but there's still the common goal in mind that they are first and foremost a DPS. Dark Knights are used to being a job that sacrifices HP in order to power its attacks, and they got rid of that identity altogether. It's also not regularly affiliated with something like being a tank. Usually tank E, but not a tank overall. It's just that they've made these consolidations before. Bard is another one. They're not used to bards being archers with a few songs to support the team. Mostly used to being primarily, songstresses of some kind. It's just weird that they were always willing to make consolidations and compromises for all of these jobs prior. But Blue Mage is where they said, no, we have to do it like this. Maybe it was just simply that they saw an opportunity to create something that we hadn't experienced before, which has been the, above asking for Blue Mage as a job, probably the #1 outcry amongst the community. Why are you always doing the same thing? Why is it always a dungeon, a trial, 8-man raids in the even-numbered patches, 24-mans in the odds? You know, why is there no content that's different from that? Why are there no other goals for me to work on? And they said, you know what? We've got Blue Mage, and people want it to be super loyal, so why don't we just make that the content? And it's just weird to me. I just don't know why this job was where that decision was finally made. And then on top of that, there's the confusion upon it being called a limited job. I understand they've explained the term a limited job at this point and what it means, but not everybody watches a live letter or a fan festival. People are going to log in and see it's a new job and probably not have any idea what they're actually getting into in terms of it being its own separate content. I don't think calling it a job was the right decision. It is, for all intents and purposes, functional as a job. It's just they threw the term limited in the front of it. It's really not a job. It's more like an internship. and it's its own content that needs to be completely kind of moved away from everything else that we currently have in the game. It's not a job, it's content. And that could work out, but I'm a little reserved on how well it could work out. You know, obviously I've seen all of their unique ideas evolve over the past few years. You know, I watched Lords of Verminion and Diadem's rework. I saw Eureka. I saw Deep Dungeon. And I've seen that regularly upon initial implementation, there's usually a few things they could have done better that they eventually at least make some sort of improvement on. And Blue Mage is a very risky thing to have that sort of mentality on. It could be a great piece of side content for people to work on that gets updated on, you know, on occasion with higher levels and new skills to learn and new bosses to take on and new rounds in the Masked Carnival. And as that, it could always be fun to be like, oh, nice, new Blue Mage content in Final Fantasy XIV. Well, now I know I can go about doing that. I can start forming parties. Maybe have Blue Mage Link Shells. Maybe Blue Mage Link Shells start trying to do like 8-man Blue Mage coils or 8-man Blue or 24-man Blue Mage Crystal Towers. And we have all these unique community experiences. Those are all totally possible things. And they sound great. They sound like cool things. But was it worth having a job that's so beloved not be a part of the game, the rest of the game, to be its own kind of separate game off here on the side? And that for me is undecided. I'm of the opinion they should have made compromises and made it a job that was like the other ones. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. I'm not saying just make it like every other job, but I mean making it a job that is designed to be accessible in all content versus a job that's designed to be limited in their own words. While I'm in that boat, I mean, I can't write it off as content. I can't say this is bad, this is going to be bad. There's no chance for redemption here. I can just say I'm surprised. And I don't think there'll ever be the release of this bittersweet idea that this could have been something that people were bringing to the modern raids, that people were, you know, prepping and min-maxing on for rotations and stuff, or for what skills to equip, which we'll still get for the Masked Carnival. But I have a feeling that once it's all put together, someone's going to put out a guide for the Masked Carnival, hint, hint. And it's going to have, hey, just use all these abilities and try to focus on doing this, and bam, you'll beat all the Masked Carnival, and then you're done. That's it. What are you going to do at that point other than silly challenges or maybe trying to beat a time trial, or I don't know. It feels like there's not enough to support this idea in the game currently, but I felt that way about previous content and then they've evolved. I felt that way about Eureka, and now here we are 3 instances in with Pyros, and the zones and the contents actually become quite fun. It just took a really long time for it to happen. And I hope that doesn't happen with Blue Mage. You know, I hope Blue Mage, they see it, it does well, people accept it. You might have heard a car honk right there in the middle of the recording. And that they continue to support it well. I mean, we've seen side content just fall out of favor if it isn't well received or doesn't do well, and Blue Mage would be a disaster for that to happen. You know, if they go, oh, well, people aren't really digging Blue Mage, let's not do more carnivals, let's not raise the level cap, let's not put that much more effort into it, or do it less frequently than we maybe otherwise have planned. And that would suck. I don't want Blue Mage to fall to the way like Eggy Glamours has, for example. I want it to be something that, you know, maybe every 2 patches, I'm looking at new content for this job. And on top of that, on all of this, I'm concerned about the term limited job becoming their excuse to take jobs and not really, I guess, be inventive with them. They name dropped Beast Tamer, although I'm going to say Beast Master for this video, and Puppet Master as other jobs that could fit in this limited scope. But I don't want that to be the way we think about jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't want to think about why this job has to be a limited job. I want to think of what consolidations could we make, or what compromises to actually make this a fully functional job. A great example is with Puppet Master. One thing that all 3 of these jobs that they've named in common, including Blue Mage, is that they're collection style jobs. Blue Mage collects abilities, Beast Masters collect pets in order to deal their damage, and then Puppet Master collects attachments for their automaton. But does that really have to be the way it is? Could Beastmaster not channel the beasts that they actually capture into their own skills? Could Puppet Master not have the puppet be either a pet like a Summoner Eggy, or maybe just be like the physical extension, maybe the weapon of the job itself that actually performs the skills? You know, does it have to be the way that, you know, I maybe remember it? I don't feel like it does. And I hope, I only want to see more limited jobs if I feel Blue Mage has been done adequately. I'm staying optimistic, and I will reserve full judgment until I've played it, until I've done the Masked Carnival. But there's always going to be that itch in the back of my brain going, man, if only I could do AlphaScape with this. Who knows, maybe one day they flip it back around and say, hey, the feedback was this, so we decided to work things around to make it more traditional. That's insane to think they would do that, but it was, you know, unlikely to see something like this in my brain 2 weeks ago. So what can I say? What do I know? I know nothing at this point. So all I can say is I hope it's good. I hope it's fun, and I hope that it does bring a sense of excitement that we don't usually have when we see the same old patch cycle every time. Fingers crossed, but I'm gonna wait. Now, before I wrap up the video, one thing I mentioned earlier is that I wanted to share more thoughts on them being locked out of deep dungeon queues. Now, I agree again, like with their normal duty rules where, you know, in case you don't have all the skills learned or anything along that nature, that you probably shouldn't be able to queue into random groups. But deep dungeon is the kind of content that I feel like Blue Mage is almost designed for without even including the Blue Carnival. Deep dungeon solos has been something that a lot of people have kind of cherished and love going after over a long period of time. And also all of the leaderboards on the website for Deep Dungeon are all separated by job. So this feels like a place that should be ripe for Blue Mage content. Now, of course, with Blue Mage only being level 50 at the launch, they obviously wouldn't be able to go through all of Deep Dungeon at the start anyway. What I would hope is that when the job hits level 60, that Deep Dungeon would open up to them and they'd be able to at least do Palace of the Dead all the way through, since at that point they'd be at the level cap. I understand there's probably some technical problems with this. For one, since Blue Mage doesn't actually learn skills every time they level up, they just open slots that they can actually use for their different skills. I'd imagine it's a little more complicated to program that into Deep Dungeon. I don't know if that's really going to be a big enough limitation though, because role actions and, you know, cross-class actions before, I mean, I'm pretty sure we've dealt with that already in another capacity. So I'm hoping that whatever it is that's restricting them, if it's just them not being level 60, fine. But eventually I would like to see them at least be allowed to join fixed parties for Deep Dungeon in the future, because I would have a lot of fun doing those as a Blue Mage. Alright, and with that, I think I've gotten my thoughts for Blue Mage out of the way. Let me know what you think. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to read the comment section on this video, because I already know there's going to be a mix of people who say they love the idea. There's going to be a mix of people who say that that they hate the idea. It's going to be very controversial. All I can ask is please be respectful to one another. If you see an opinion that really just gets your blood boiling because you're on the opposite side of the fence, I'd say that stopping to argue in the bottom of the comment section is probably not worth the time on either one's, on anyone's. Just post your comments and probably don't reply to each other, because it's probably going to end in a shit show that I'm going to be reading and I'm just going to be like, oh no, I knew I was going to do this with this video. Anyway, good luck. Good luck down there. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. I've got thoughts videos coming on some of the other stuff that came out of the fan festival from North America, including some coverage on the various panels. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you all in the next video, and until then, take care.